Today on At Issue, tax season is in full swing, and that may mean that if you're not careful, some of your refund or even your identity could fall into the wrong hands. We'll talk to an expert from Eastern Illinois University on what you can do to keep your wallet and personal information safe. That's next on At Issue, so stay tuned. Welcome to At Issue. I'm Kate Pleasant. It only takes a few seconds, and before you know it, your identity, your money, and anything else that thieves can get their hands on are all gone. Today on the show, we'll be talking to Dr. Axton Betz from Eastern Illinois University. Dr. Betz is an assistant professor of consumer studies in the School of Family and Consumer Sciences at Eastern and an expert on identity theft. We'll be covering the specifics involving identity theft during tax time. We'll get to our studio guest in just a moment, but first, here's more on identity theft from a recent story reported by CNN.
I had some mail stolen out of my mailbox.
It only took a minute for thieves to steal a credit card statement out of Brandon Barnhart's mailbox. Soon after, his card had hundreds of dollars in fraudulent charges.
It was shocking. Basically, I didn't know how it could have gotten stolen. You know, I always get my mail every day, but somehow between 8 and 5, somebody came along and got that piece. I felt victimized.
Criminals target both mailboxes and computers to steal sensitive information.
Anyone can be a victim of identity theft. If you shop online, if you do banking online, if you do any kind of transaction online whatsoever, you can be a victim of identity theft.
Johnny Woods works at Alltech Computers and sees victims of identity theft.
It's an everyday situation.
The scheme seems simple, but can be very profitable.
They're very sophisticated. It's not necessarily that they're going to steal $100,000 from you, even though that can happen. More than likely what's going to happen is they're going to take a couple bucks out of your account every couple of weeks, and they're going to do this over the course of forever.
Armed with your name and social security number, thieves will target your tax return. Investigators with the IRS say armed gangs and violent criminals now turn to tax fraud to make a quick buck and file electronic returns. Police say criminals will get that information any way they can.
It's a pitch trap, really.
And welcome back to the studio here on At Issue. I am now joined by Dr. Axton Betz from Eastern Illinois University. And Dr. Betz, you are an identity theft expert, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you want to tell us a little bit about what your research focuses on?
My specific research focuses on adult child identity theft victims, so those who were under the age of 18 when their identity was stolen, but they didn't learn their identity was stolen until they were 18 or older.
Okay. And so can you tell us why this topic interests you so much?
Well, the reason I started this specific research project is because I'm researching myself. I am an adult child identity theft victim. My parents' identities, along with my identity, were stolen 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years in April. Wow. And my parents knew that their identities had been stolen, but back then, in the early 90s, no one knew that child identity theft could happen. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know my identity was stolen until I was 19. I was moving off campus. I was in college, moving off campus to my first apartment. Very excited, got to bring my 2 childhood cats from home. And I went to the electric company and, you know, went to establish service, and they sent me a letter that said we need a $100 deposit due to your credit score. And I thought, oh, okay, it's because I'm 19 and I don't have one.
Don't have a credit score, yeah.
And I'm not making the connection that because mom and dad have been victims of identity theft, chances are I have been too. Mm-hmm. And there was a number to call at the bottom of the letter for a copy of my credit report. And I thought, okay, you know, I'll call it just out of curiosity. I'm thinking this is going to be a one-page document, my name, address, few student loans, that's it. Simple. And about 6 weeks later, this packet from the credit bureau arrives in the mail, and I'm thinking, credit reports must be really hard to read. They must give you a
lot of pages.
Yeah, they must give you a lot of directions on how to interpret these. This is going to be really complicated. I opened it up. It wasn't complicated. My credit report was 10 pages long, full of fraudulent accounts, full of collection agency entries that I could trace all the way back to the time that my parents' identities were stolen.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So is that relatively common then, people, you know, that get their identity stolen don't know it for a long time, or is it something that most people know right away?
It depends on really your age. And the reason that child identity theft is so popular, and child identity theft is a form of identity theft that's on the rise, is because kids typically have a clean credit history for 18 years, and they don't need it typically for 18 years. So an identity thief can use it as long as they want to, and before detection, and that can be 16, 17, 18 years.
Okay. And for, people that maybe aren't as familiar, can you talk about identity theft, what it involves? What exactly are people doing when they're stealing your identity?
Well, what people do when they steal your identity is they look for your personal information. So they're looking for your social security number, your mother's maiden name, date of birth, things that they can use to basically become you financially, assume your character, obtain medical services under your name, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So they're literally becoming you,
yes.
in a sense, okay, on paper and maybe even in real life.
Yes.
Okay. And so is there a specific group of people, you mentioned that, your identity was stolen, you didn't know it till you're 19 because you were a child. Is there a specific group like children or the elderly that are more at risk than others for this? Based on the surveys and things that have been released recently, children are more at risk than other populations right now. Okay. And is there a specific reason for that? Is it just because, like you said, it's that delay in finding out? Okay.
Yes.
So obviously the people are going to jump to that first because no one's going to know for a while.
Right.
What are some of the most common ways that people, start to notice something's not right when their identity's been stolen?
Well, it's usually, they go apply for credit, or they go apply like I did for utility service, and they get rejected, or they have to pay a higher deposit, and you're thinking, wait a minute. And then they might start getting pre-approved credit offers, and maybe they haven't applied for credit for a long time, and they're like, why am I getting this? Another big one is collection agency letters and phone calls for accounts that aren't yours.
Right.
It's been 20 years, I still get collection letters.
Wow. During that time, huh?
Yes.
So this has a lasting impact for some people.
Yes.
Not easy to clean up.
Right.
What are the steps that one would have to take, if you think, I think my identity's been stolen? What's the first thing that you should do?
File a police report.
Okay.
And that's the number one thing you have to do even before you contact any creditors, any banks, because that police report establishes your credibility as a victim. If you were to go to the banks, to creditors, without that police report in hand, they're going to tell you to get a police report.
Okay.
They're not even going to talk to you. And after you get that police report and you go to the banks, the creditors, whoever you have to go to, you're going to have to fill out paperwork with each of those institutions, and it's usually fraud affidavits. That's what they're called. So fill out anything that they ask you to fill out. Make copies. Keep a log of who you've talked to, when you've talked to them, what the conversation was about, and you're just going to start a file and keep track of everything, and know that this is probably going to last for several months, if not years.
Wow. So this is a long cleanup process then?
Usually, yes.
Okay. And what are the reasons, why are people stealing identities? What are the things that they're doing with these?
Well, the reason they're stealing identities is because they can.
Okay.
It's an access issue. There's been some research on why identity thieves do what they do. And the reason they steal identities is simply because they can. What was the second part of that question?
Why do they do it? Is the general question here. Do they make money? Is that maybe a motivation?
And it's for financial gain, usually, and it's also a way to finance drug activity. In some of the research that I've read, a lot of identity thieves work in identity theft rings, and it's related to organized crime. And a lot of these identity theft rings, they use the proceeds, so to speak, from identity theft to finance methamphetamine.
Okay,
activity.
so they're bankrolling drug
right
activities. Okay. Well, the CNN story we just saw kind of covered a little bit of that. Gangs, things like that are using fraud for financial gain. So, so what is it? Is it happening more now than it was in the past? Because you said like in the early 90s when this fraud happened to you that, you didn't know about it right away and things like that. Is this something that is happening more often?
Yes. In some of the more recent surveys that have been released, identity theft is on the rise.
Okay. And is there a reason for that? Is it technology related?
You know, and I think in part it's technology related. I think in part it's due to the economy. You know, people need things like credit and utilities, and so they can use someone else's, you know, clean identity. You know, and you know, for instance, a child's, you know, desperation sometimes kicks in, and you know, they do what they have to do.
So are people doing this to get jobs? I know before we came on camera you were talking about, you know, illegal immigrants and things like that.
Yes, and identity theft to obtain employment is on the rise.
Okay. So people are just needing, you know, that clean record to get this job, and so they'll go to any lengths to get it then.
Right.
Okay. And so is it heightened during tax time? Because, you know, there's a lot of information out there during tax time. People are passing things around. Is this something that happens more often, you know, during a time like now when we're starting to file taxes?
Well, filing taxes, it offers another opportunity for identity thieves to get information. I don't necessarily think there's a peak in identity theft during this time, but it's just another venue.
Something else to be aware of.
Right.
Okay. And what is it that, you know, an identity thief is going to look for? Well, how do they get access to your life? What are things that you shouldn't be doing?
Well, things that you shouldn't be doing in general, and I talk to my students about this in courses here at Eastern. You should never, number one, put your full birth date on Facebook, and it seems like most people do it. And your full birth date, that's one of the 3 keys to your identity. The 3 keys to your identity are your social security number, mother's maiden name, and date of birth. And there are a lot of women who put their maiden name on Facebook as well, you know, to connect with their old high school classmates from back in the day. Well, when you do that, you're putting your children's identities at risk, and most people don't know that.
Okay.
When you get pre-approved credit offers in the mail, or you know, anything that has personal identifying information on it, before you throw it away, you need to shred it using a cross-cutting shredder, because a cross-cutting shredder cuts papers in long strips this way and like this as well. So it cuts it into finer pieces, and it makes it harder for identity thieves who are literally digging through your trash.
So tearing it in half is not good enough?
No, because identity thieves will dig through trash and then reconstruct that to get personal information.
Okay, so a couple things to note there. So, you know, during tax time, you know, with online tax preparation, that comes up in my mind. You know, is that something that is not as secure as you might think it is, or is it something that you should go ahead and do if that's if that's convenient?
I feel that it's as safe as it can be. You know, if data breaches happen all the time. If you go to privacyrights.org, they keep a list of all the data breaches that are going on around the country, and it's amazing, you know, how many data breaches occur on a daily and weekly basis, and where they occur, and how many people are affected. You know, places like, you know, TurboTax and things like that, they do everything they can to ensure that there's not going to be a data breach. It's not 100% certain that there's, you know, not going to be a data breach that compromises your information, but one of the ways that you can keep your information safe is you use a very strong password. So, you know, don't use 1234, don't use your pet's name, don't use your kid's name. So that's one thing that you can do to help keep the information you're entering online secure. You also, with your own computer, and you want to do this anyway, regardless of the fact that it's tax season, you want to keep your virus software up to date, and you want to run at least a weekly scan, and then you want to have spyware software that's up to date, and you want to scan for spyware weekly, because viruses get on computers and you may not necessarily know you have a virus or spyware, and those types of malware, some of them are programmed to steal your personal information.
Okay, so they're watching you and they're gathering that information.
Right.
Okay, and so this isn't just a tax time problem, but it's something that we could, you know, remind us about the awareness of, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so how is, you know, theft in technology, identity theft in technology? Obviously, it seems like that would have been something that's caused a rise in it. You know, with technology comes greater access and things like that. Is that true? Has there been more thefts after the invention of the internet and things like that?
The data that's out there on that is conflicting.
Okay.
There are some reports that say, yes, because of technology, that's what's caused the rise in identity theft. And then there's other reports that say, no, identity thieves are still doing it the old-fashioned way through digging through your trash.
Right. Okay. And so, you know, if someone were trying to gather identities online, are there certain things, sites they're looking at? You mentioned Facebook and social networking sites like that. Are there other places that, you know, you should be careful about entering your information?
Well, with entering your personal information, you want to make sure the website is secure. And so one of the ways to do that, let's use Amazon.com as an example. At the top in the URL, it's HTTP, and every website starts with HTTP.
Sure.
Well, after the HTTP, there should be an S, and that S means that
It's secure,
it's
right?
secure.
Okay.
Also, at the bottom of the page you're on, there should be a padlock, and that's a sign that the website is secure as well.
Okay, so it's being secured through that company or whatever
Right.
the case might
Right.
be, so
And
that it's not out there.
Right, and so the information that you're entering on that site, the company, you know, in this example, Amazon.com, is encrypting that information. So when it's transmitted, it's much more difficult for individuals to intercept that information.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there potential risks for identity theft coming up? You know, cell phone apps are really popular right now. Smartphones, there's just a lot of information getting out and about that way.
Right, and identity thieves are looking towards smartphones and apps as a way to gather personal information. One thing that a lot of people don't do that's an easy way to protect your personal information, because phones get lost. You know, they fall out of our pockets. They, you know, we leave them sitting somewhere. Password protect your phone. I mean, if you don't do that, someone could pick up your phone and go, oh, free phone. Oh, look at all this, you know, personal information, and do with it what they will.
Photos, contact information, anything like that. Okay,
Right.
so protect your phone.
Right.
What is it? Can you describe a little more what it's like to have to clean up an identity theft mess? You know, I know you said it takes a long time, but like for your family, since you've been through this, what is it? What are the steps? How long and what exactly are you doing?
Well, the first thing that I did, and this is been 11 years ago now. First thing I did is I went to the state police and filed a police report. And a lot of people who've talked to me have talked about the struggle with getting police to take a report. And the reason for that is that identity theft often spans jurisdictions.
Right.
I knew, based on my parents' situation, you know, living with that for 8 years prior to my own identity theft discovery, that the identity theft likely was contained in Indiana, where I grew up. So I went to the state police thinking, you know, they have jurisdiction over the state of Indiana. And even with that, the officer who took my information, you could tell he was less than enthusiastic. And I have the police report at home. He wrote 2 lines about my identity theft case and gave me a copy of it. I started disputing fraudulent accounts with the credit bureaus, and if the original creditor or the collection agency who has an entry on your credit report doesn't respond to the credit bureau to the dispute within 30 days, it automatically falls off your credit report.
Okay.
Well, in some cases that happened with me. In some cases, the original creditor, the collection agency, verified the debt.
Okay.
Because the social security number and the name matched.
Okay.
That was it.
That was the only thing. Okay.
So some fraudulent entries on my credit report took the full 7 years to fall off my credit report, because a negative entry on your credit report takes 7 years for it to fall off. So my credit report, and you know, this started with me in 2001. My credit report did not clear of those initial fraudulent accounts that were put on there back in the early 90s until 2009.
Okay, so it was that long.
Yes.
Wow. So, you know, it really can be. And is it hard to find these people? Because obviously, you know, you said the police were less than enthusiastic, and I imagine, is some of that because it's hard to find those people? Obviously, they don't have an identity, right?
Well, it's interesting. That's starting to change a little bit, and I feel that the identity thieves who aren't as sophisticated, they're gonna trip up somewhere, and you're gonna find them eventually. You know, they're gonna send something in your name to a specific address that, you know, is theirs, or something like that, and you'll figure it out. The more sophisticated ones, they're so good they make it look like you, and you don't find them. And that's what happened with my parents and myself, was that they were so good they made everything look like it was us that had done it.
Okay, so really hard to track down then.
Right.
Is there any kind of way that this has changed in the way they're tracking identity thefts over the years, or the way they're trying to catch identity thieves? Has that evolved at all?
Not particularly, no.
Okay.
No, the victims that I've interviewed for my research, have a lot of the same struggles that I did when I was first starting to go through this process 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Do they have any common ground of where this was stolen from, or where the information these people got came from?
But in my particular case,
the people you've talked to, or in your case, I mean, are there trends that emerge, and where these people, is it digging through trash? Is it?
In the case of my research, half of my participants had their identity stolen by their parent, and so.
Okay, that's a whole other.
That's a whole other ball of worms. With the emotional effects there, and the relationship issues, the family issues. So, see, there's conflicting reports on this as well. Some reports, like my research, say that parents as perpetrators, that's still a trend. There are other reports that say that trend is dying off, and it's people who are trying to secure employment that are finding children's social security numbers and using them to obtain employment, file taxes, buy homes, buy cars, basically become these kids.
Mm-hmm. And do some of these discoveries, come from taxes? Maybe these people are filing tax returns and you go to file yours. Is there a conflict there?
Yeah, that can happen. Mm-hmm. And what will happen is if a tax return has already been filed in your name, and you file one, the IRS will send you a notification that there's already been a tax return filed in your name. And that is a clear sign that you've been a victim of identity theft. So if you get a letter like that, you need to contact the IRS right away, and they'll ask you for a police report, and then they'll ask you for a copy of your personal documentation, like a driver's license or something like that, to verify that you really are you. And then you go from there with the IRS.
Okay. And are there other things that you would tell people, in general, to be wary of and watch out for? What do you tell your students when you're going out into the world? What are the best things you can do to avoid identity theft?
Well, the number one thing you can do to keep tabs on your identity is check your credit report once a year. And you can do that for free on annualcreditreport.com.
Okay.
Not freecreditreport.com, even though they've had commercials that have the jingles. That's not where you go get your free credit report. You go to annualcreditreport.com, and you can get a free copy of your credit report from each of the 3 credit bureaus once a year. And those 3 credit bureaus are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion.
Okay. And so that's the number one thing you'd say is watch your credit reports,
yes.
Right? Okay. Because, obviously it would be something where you'd probably notice if something had been opened up that you definitely didn't do, right?
Right.
Okay. And so what's the latest that you're learning from your research? What are some interesting things that you've been noticing as you go through?
Well, one of the things that that was interesting to me in my research is that the individuals who I interviewed, again, they had their identity stolen when they were under the age of 18, learned about it after they had turned 18. It was interesting to me the lack of support they had from their family. And with respect to recovering their identity. So, some of my participants went through the experience and, like me, wanted to find ways to advocate for other victims, and family members like, no, this is a private matter, don't do that. In the cases where a parent has stolen their child's identity, obviously there was no parent support there. A lot of times the parents would just say, hey, figure it out, it's your problem. So that the lack of support from family was something that really stood out to me in my most recent research. Okay,
because I assume that's something that you're going to have, since this is such a long process.
Right.
What are the kinds of things that family members can do to help you through this process?
Just be a listening ear. If there's any financial issues, that you as a young adult have, you're going to need, your parents or, extended family potentially to help you out. Like in my case, my first car loan, I could not get a car loan on my own.
Really?
My credit score, because when I got my credit report, I also got a copy of my credit score. It was 380, and I was in the 2nd percentile in the nation. They told me that on that paper. And waited a few years. I needed a new car. The car I had just completely died. And on foot, went all over town, couldn't get a car loan on my own. I needed a cosigner. And I said, you don't understand. My parents, who would cosign for me, have had identity theft happen to them worse than I did.
Sure.
So my mom was able to co-sign for me on a loan at 18% interest. And that's like putting a used car, it was a used car, and it's like putting a used car on a credit card.
Oh,
so
my.
it's that kind of support, you know, things that come up as you're recovering from this.
Sure.
Life still goes on while you're recovering from identity theft. You still have needs. You're still trying to establish yourself, you know, as a young adult. And you still need people in your life that are willing to help you out and have to be understanding that this isn't your fault. You didn't do this.
Right, absolutely. Okay, well, Dr. Axton Betz from Eastern Illinois University, we really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us a lot more about identity theft here and just some great reminders as we're in the midst of tax season. So thank you for coming on the show, and we hope to see you next time right here on At Issue. Thanks for watching today.